What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Karnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, we have 4 teams remaining for the college football playoff, playing for a college football national championship. Teams of the bye week fall to 1-7 in the 12-team playoff era. Indiana, which seems to be breaking every norm and every trend the last 2 seasons, being the only bye team that won, breaking another trend.
It's crazy.
Kind of body bagging Indiana or Alabama there in the Rose Bowl. We're gonna recap the quarterfinal games, make some picks against the spread on our semifinal games. Our semifinal matchups are Oregon and Indiana in the Peach Bowl. We've got Miami and Ole Miss in the Fiesta Bowl. You and I were talking maybe for a lot of reasons, but they should just switch those bowl games, man. Location makes a lot more sense. They switch them. The Peach Bowl is traditionally an ACC versus SEC matchup. That makes more sense, but it is what it is. It's a neutral site. Daniel, let's talk about it, man. Let's break down these quarterfinal games. Let's begin with, we had the standalone New Year's Eve. Miami beats Ohio State. Daniel, that was a really impressive win for Miami. You know, we both took Ohio State. We texted before the game. I'm not trying to be like, recorded on here and said one thing, but thought differently. We were texting the group chat, and I'm like, I had 2 funny feelings. One of them was very wrong. One of them was right. And I'm like, Miami, what if they just come out here and bully? I'm just like, they're physical. They've shown their ceiling. They've got ridiculous athletes, they come out here, they kind of bully Ohio State after Ohio State kind of got bullied by Indiana. So they end Ohio State season. One of the 4 teams I thought could win it all, but Miami being one of those as well. Really, really impressed with the way Miami looked, especially on defense in that game against Ohio State.
Yeah, I think, coming into the playoff, I think you and I were both on Miami in the sense that, they could go on a little bit of a run. This was possible, I guess, in my mind, but I really just felt, okay, they're going to beat Texas A&M, and then they're going to play a good game against Ohio State. After seeing what they did to Texas A&M defensively, I thought they're going to kind of keep Ohio State in a box, but Ohio State's too good. They're eventually going to break through. I mean, you and I both picked them to lay the points, 9.5 points. So it was supposed to be a game where it was not only just a win, but a comfortable win by more than 2 possessions, or more than a possession, I should say. But as it started unfolding, it was kind of like exactly as you prescribed it, with Miami just was too good on the really defensive line. Offensively, they were good enough to do what they needed to do. They didn't seem like they overwhelmed, Ohio State. Obviously, the score is 24-14. It wasn't a blowout. It was just 10 points the other way. But Ohio State, you could see kind of Julian Sayin showing up as more of, I don't want to just call him a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. So, it is what it is. It's the end of his second season in college. But he just looked like he was a little shell-shocked. He'd been hit a couple times. There's a couple plays. I mean, I remember a play where he could have ran the ball and gotten like 10 yards and got a first down, but he goes through his progressions and throws the ball out of bounds. And it was, wide open in front of him. But I think he had just been so rattled. And that was something that people don't really talk about. They think about, can this player beat this player? Can this play the actual psychology of the game. Miami beat up Ohio State, and they're not used to getting beat up. Even in the game against Indiana, I think there's a certain mentality of, well, we're Ohio State and you're Indiana. Yeah, we've kept it close with you. You beat us by 3, whatever. We're still Ohio State. This was kind of almost a cultural shift, and that happened in a couple of these games. I kind of think that this is something, whether it be related to the playoff in general or format, or if this is truly NIL that has spread to everybody and all it, it's a any given Saturday kind of league now. This one kind of felt like a unseating of, last year's champion, and Miami is something special. I mean, they're more than I thought they were.
Yeah. So I'll say one more thing about this game. The Post-game win expectancy, something we talked about, stat from Bill Conley. What do you think Miami over Ohio State, that post-game win expectancy was?
It was probably pretty high. I would say 80%.
30%. Lost the
Really?
success rate battle. Yeah, they lost the success rate battle. Like, this is where, so post-game win expectancy is basically if you take all the stats on a down-to-down basis and put it into a computer, what result do you get? And so this kind of calculates, if you put in those same exact stats, then like what result do you get? And basically, they're saying Miami beats Ohio State 30% of the time based on like a down to down basis, how that game played out. And success rate's a big part of that. The Ohio State had a 3% higher success rate, not a ton higher, but you also count for turnovers, of course. That was the only post game win expectancy of a winner that was below 50% for the
Mm,
quarterfinals. But I mean, again, but if you watch the game, you wouldn't feel that way at all. I think the result you got was what you expected just watching the players play. Now, Ohio
mm,
State had some dudes on defense as well that, I mean, dude, you had, I think across all the quarterfinals, you had some really hard hits. Like, and I just like watching football at the highest level. Of course, you get that watching on Sundays. You get that in the NFL, but that's one thing I've enjoyed about the playoff is, dude, especially this past run, you've got people hitting people, and you've got athletes playing at their highest level. Both defenses I thought played unbelievable, but Miami had a more consistent run game than Ohio State did, and I think that allowed them to win this game and a more consistent pass rush. They got home more than Ohio State did, and they move on to the semifinals. First double-digit seed to win a game in the 12-team era. That's only the last 2 years, but still. And now they move on to the semis, and they will play in the Fiesta Bowl, Ole Miss. Let's jump to the Sugar Bowl. Ole Miss, after losing in the regular season to Georgia, beats Georgia in the rematch by 3. Daniel, Georgia had to do one thing to go to overtime. Just don't give up a long pass play. They give up a long pass play. Ole Miss's kicker was automatic in the Sugar Bowl. Trinidad Chambliss was, I mean, he was a robot, man. The drive where they took the lead, it was 24-19 Georgia. The drive where they took the lead, he had 3 plays that you're like, that was his play of the season. And they
yeah.
happened on the same drive. Just back to back to back, it seemed like on third down, season on the line. There's no way he gets out of this. And I've watched a few times, Daniel, like a quarterback just get into the zone where it's like, oh man, they just can't miss. I was at the 2019 SEC championship, and I mean, Joe Burrow had a few games like that, but just watching a quarterback live, and you're like, you just it leaves his hand. You're like, that's going to be a catch, and it seemed like that watching Trinidad Chambliss of that's just going to hit someone in the hands for a first down every single time he dropped back. It seemed that way, which they had him drop back almost 50 times, so they needed it from him on a down to down basis. Ole Miss, like their success rate against Georgia, that 56-37 down to down, they were much better than Georgia. And honestly, again, that was a 98% post game win expectancy, which is considering how the game played out. But the Disney Cinderella story continues for Ole Miss, and I thought it would run out in this one. But Daniel, of the 4 teams I thought can win the national championship, Georgia's the only one to lose in the quarterfinals to a
Mm-hmm.
team that I did not think can win it all. And Ole Miss is now 2 wins away from a national championship. Really, really impressive win. It was like a home game for them in the Sugar Bowl. Their fans have to be on cloud 9, Daniel, because to go from your coach leaving you to you hire the DC who's like one of us, and it's like, yeah, you beat Tulane, you beat him pretty bad in the regular season. That was expected. To go beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and to now be
Avenge
just
your
2
only
wins
loss.
away,
Yeah.
avenge your only loss. I mean, that's got to be
I
a
mean,
blast for those fans. Really impressive win.
it's a special season. Ole Miss they've been building to this for a while under Lane Kiffin. And during this season, it was one that, I think that this is we've seen Ole Miss beat Georgia. They did it last year, and it was kind of, one of those, it was a very big deal last year, but last year they, lost other games that prevented them from going to the SEC championship or going to the playoff. And so you kind of felt like there was you know, something holding them back. This year, of course, they lose to Georgia, and so there's, I guess, that thought kind of creeps back in of, oh yeah, well they're going to hit their head on a ceiling, which is kind of manifested in their coach leaving for LSU, and this whole like conundrum of like, oh, well, if I'm going to win a national championship, I'm going to have to go to a place that can do it. And it's just crazy because he's there, like you said, 2 wins away from winning a national championship. This game, there were moments that unfolded in this game where it looked like, oh, okay, this is going to be toe to toe. Then Georgia got that lead at halftime and they were going to get the ball after half. And it was kind of like, all right, Georgia's got a 9-point lead. You know, Pete Golding chased some points. You know, he tried to go for two and didn't get it. And then, you know, they kind of had that mess up right in the end of the first half, that fire drill that kind of went wrong with it. That is on the receiver. It wasn't on him, but where they were kind of already in field goal range, but then they threw the ball and got tackled in bounds. I'm mentioning that for the sheer fact of, you know, if it would have gone the other way, you'd look back to those points and say, oh, you know, this is the inexperience of a head coach not being
Right.
able to do, but the way that they kept coming, and you know, he was unflappable in his halftime interview, and he came out and he just, you know, we just got to do this, and this, you know, we can play with these guys. We're right here with them. It seemed like the broadcast didn't believe him. And then he comes out and it's exactly what they did. Their defense got stops that they needed to. Georgia may have been a little more conservative than they needed to at certain points, thinking they could sit on a lead, especially with someone like Trinidad Chambliss, who was kind of
Yeah.
went to a different level. And I think that there was also a thought. I know that I thought this during the game. I don't know if you did, but when Kewan Lacey had that fumble that was then returned for a touchdown, it kind of felt like, not that it was insurmountable, but I almost felt like they weren't going to be able to depend on Lacey the rest of the game. And if that was the case, I felt like it was insurmountable. But to credit to Lacey, he came back, he ends up 2 touchdowns in the second half, ends up playing a very good second half, almost 100 yards, kind of righting his wrong within the same game, but also from earlier in the year. But yeah, credit to Ole Miss, the way that they were able to finish down the stretch. Pete Golding for being able to overcome some maybe early blunders as a new head coach. And yeah, currently the only coach in the SEC. Oh, no. I was going to say the only one with a winning record. Kalen Bohr still has a winning record against Kirby Smart, but he's off to a great start. He's undefeated against Kirby Smart. How about that? So good job for them. And yeah, this one's going to be fun to watch. I agree. It should be the Peach Bowl. Like, why are we making this Miami and Ole Miss going to be the Fiesta Bowl? Like, the Peach Bowl is ACC versus SEC.
I was looking at one thing. Dan. Rushing yards 124 to 111. Georgia out rushing Ole Miss, but again, this was something that I was like, if this repeats itself, that's night and night, and that's Georgia outrushed them 220 to 80 in the first matchup. So to close that gap and to stop Georgia from running the ball, I mean, honestly, to stop them on offense, period. I mean, that they shut Georgia's offense down the second half. Well deserving win for Ole Miss. All right, that's the Fiesta Bowl. The Peach Bowl will be the Oregon Ducks. They were slight favorites against Texas Tech. This is one you and I nailed and got right. My biggest thing going into this game, Daniel, was what is the best defense that Texas Tech has faced? Because they're going to go up against what I think is one of the top 3 defenses in the country. The answer is Utah. They were a top 20 defense, ranked exactly 20th. So this offense that has been putting up points and, you know, they're beating everybody by 20. Texas Tech's defense I thought was legit, period. That, you know, they have the bodies, and even though it's against the Big 12, but Daniel, I think this is a what's the word here? This is a downside of conference realignment, a consequence. I was like, it's not conflict, consequence. This is a consequence of conference realignment, in that to the people who said like, yeah, but this happens every year, Daniel. You know, we grew up in the South. SEC fans, and to be clear, people that are fans of teams in the SEC will say,
That's
yeah, but
a good distinction.
who's Ohio State played? And I'm like, okay, come on. They play a Big Ten schedule. Like, they play Texas week 1. We got to stop playing this who have they played game. It's 2025. We have plenty of metrics to see how they play, not just who they play. You know, so I feel like I'm the Big 10 or Big 12 or ACC defender in saying, hey, we can't play this who have you played game. With Texas Tech, I was playing it, though, because I'm like, yeah, look at this margin of victory, but man, nobody in the Big 12 has the bodies Texas Tech has. They should be body bagging people.
Right.
And they did, but the defense was legit all season. The offense was what I questioned. Because I'm like, what happens when you go up against a defensive line that outweighs your offensive line? Like, what happens when you go up against NFL corners who can lock down your receivers? And what happens when Baron Morton is all of a sudden trying to recover just with a complex defensive system. That's all she wrote. Oregon dominates Texas Tech. They cannot move the ball at all against Oregon. So a spread that I felt very confident going in. The spread confused me. Felt very justified in one of the two I got right. So we'll take a victory lap there, considering the terrible season I had against the spread this year. But Oregon is who I thought they were. They're peaking at the right time. They're playing for a semifinal now. They got to go face a rematch against Indiana, but really impressive win against Texas Tech, and they're firing in all cylinders, it looks like, right now.
Yeah, I mean, since we're mentioning records, of course, we come off the high of going 3-1 in the first week of the playoff, and I flip it around with the 1-3 week. This week, this was my only victory, so I will also take victory lap here. But it comes down to defense, like you said. I mean, Texas Tech did not get. I mean, they got blown out in the sense that it was 3 scores, but 23-0. Not scoring is the big issue here. 6-0 at halftime. Texas Tech's right there, but of course the 2 second half touchdowns for Oregon were the difference. Dante Moore did just enough and did not hurt his team. There was, Texas Tech had 2 fumbles. That's something that's just going to come back to bite you every time. It's just how the ball bounces when that happens. But as I was watching this game, some friends were saying, "Oh, this is a boring game." I'm like, "Well, yeah, but when you put in the fact that like every moment matters, you're trading possessions. Like every time they punt, you're getting your field position and everything like that." And it just felt like Oregon was comfortable playing that kind of a game if they needed to. I think Oregon can ramp up, and I think this is why we picked Oregon. I have to go back and look at my show notes for that, but they can win multiple ways. They can, if they got to go in a scoring match, they've got really elite talent on the perimeter and a really good quarterback. And I think that if they had to go blow for blow and everything, they could do that. I think that they were right in this type of game when they saw that they could kind of sit on it and, play defense, and, their offense doesn't have to make, crazy plays. They're comfortable with all their backs, they averaged less than 2 yards a rush. So this wasn't a very great offensive performance by Oregon in and of itself. But I came away impressed with the Oregon defense. And I think that, we're going to go to this next one with Indiana, talking about that. This will be maybe the best defense that Indiana has played all year, and they've played them before. So we're going to have that to kind of base things off of. And they had to play them at their house, so that's going to be a good look. But yeah, Oregon definitely a team that we identified at the beginning of the year that I think some people gave up on, including myself specifically, and they've kind of just hung out, and they're right where they've expected to be all year. So that's the playoff semifinal.
They will face the Indiana Hoosiers, who, once again, Daniel, they just go out and beat a good team and beat them way worse than they beat the other good teams they did this year. Only team with the bye in the last 2 years to win their opening game. I love Kurt Cignetti. I don't know if it was pregame or maybe the press conference before the Rose Bowl. He got asked about like the Alabama mystique, and he said basically that was before their players really playing college ball, when Alabama had that mystique, and they only know what they've seen on tape. And I was like, that's a wrap. This game's over. Yeah, they body bag Alabama. That was by far the biggest blowout of the quarterfinals. They shut down everything they did in offense. The Alabama did an offense, and Indiana's offense showed up to work. Mendoza looked like the Heisman Trophy winner. The receivers are getting open, great routes. Their offensive line held up against Alabama's defensive line. Again, Daniel, I know their roster is 65% transfers, but it's still hard for me to comprehend how good Indiana is. They've been the best team all season. I am a fan of the team that's proven they've been the best all season, winning it all. So you might say I'm rooting for Indiana to win it all this year. They've been the best team all season, and they proved it once again in the Rose Bowl. Very deserving win. Really fun for their fan base. They're just a really good football team. I don't know what else there's to say, Daniel. They have no weakness. They do everything at a high level. I was texting our friend David Cobb and saying, like, day of, I was like, man, is Bama going to come out here and show a little Bama? This is a top 2 roster in the country. Like, are they going to show that they're Alabama in this game? And I'm like, man, but just watching Alabama this year, they have to walk a tightrope to win. Like
Yeah.
they have one way to win a football game, and they did it a lot this year. But I'm like, Indiana it's hard for me to comprehend the roster and knowing that they have like no weakness and they just do everything at a very high level. Signetti's an assassin. There's the very memeable video going around of him on Twitter right now. That's great. Of like, I think it was after they scored a touchdown or had a big play or something. He's just looking all serious and just kind of like looking at the field, analyzing. And anyway, they're fun to root for. This isn't just a good story anymore, Daniel. This is this is the best football team in the country. And Oregon's going to have their hands full. They've already lost this team once, and Alabama found out just how good Indiana was in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, this was one that was kind of like a reckoning almost. The Big Ten and the SEC. Obviously, these two. This is the only one that was a Big Ten versus SEC matchup. So you're putting out Indiana, and you've got traditional power Alabama, and you and I are guys who've been molded by watching Nick Saban teams do this year in and year out and win and do it, win at the highest level. And they've had Georgia's number for so many years. And so even when Georgia had their ascent, Alabama would still be able to beat them. And so I think that there's a part of our mind that I know that I'm blind to it. You picked Indiana, right?
Yeah, I picked them.
You picked them.
Winning
I
color.
picked
Yep.
Alabama. So I'm going to wear this one, but I picked Alabama with the sheer fact I had them winning outright, not just, it was a 6.5 point spread. I just had believed, that there was a certain level that there would be an Alabama mystique. There would be this because I've seen it play out so much. And this almost was a liberating loss for me in the picks because I'm almost free to just see the board as it is.
Yeah.
Indiana truthfully is so far has been the best team that we've seen. I mean, spoiler alert, they're the only ones that are still undefeated, but it wasn't just a win. It wasn't just something where you could say, oh, they got that last second field goal. What a great story. Like you're just talking about. Mendoza's 14 of 16, 3 touchdowns. They had his little brother in the fourth quarter. They were doing everything they wanted to. And they were physical with Alabama. That first drive, Alabama, came and sacked Mendoza. And I remember thinking, okay, Indiana hasn't seen a defense like this, perhaps. This was my SEC bias. And then it was almost like the film has been lifted from my eyes. I was able to see this. 38-3 is a shellacking. Signetti is that dude. Jacob, the 4 in the semifinal, and we can go ahead and jump into these in just a moment. But right, Ole Miss, their last national championship, 1962. Miami, last one, 2001. Oregon has never won one. Indiana has never won one. A football national championship. So, if I remove any hurt that I had as a Georgia fan, losing to Ole Miss and not having an opportunity to win this is pretty interesting, man. This is some a former blue blood, and then a 3 other teams that just have never done it, or Ole Miss did in 1962. I'm not hating on their 1962 championship, but I had to Google it to see that it was real. This is going to be kind of a reckoning in the sense last year, yeah, there was parity, but the parity was, dude, Ohio State ended up being, what were they, the 10 seed, the 9 seed, and then
The 8 seed.
8 seed. And then they ran the table and did their thing. That is different. That was Ohio State. They're a blue blood. I mentioned to you prior to us getting on the call that it's whatever it is from the Dark Knight with that the Joker says about order, and that when things start to go with chaos, there's, everybody starts to freak out. I don't know the exact line, so I'm paraphrasing, of course, but the order in college football is the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States. And for all of those 3 teams specifically, the fact that those 3 teams were the ones to lose, sorry, Texas Tech, but those 3 teams specifically lost in this round was the most rattling thing I think you could have seen. And so one of those things happening, Ohio State losing is this huge story, but they were just like, oh, thank goodness Indiana blew out Alabama. Now those SEC people will shut up. Well, all the SEC people were like, thank goodness Ohio State lost, so the Big Ten people will shut up. And Indiana's like, we're just the best, and then Georgia loses that night. So, it was one of these things where it's a big shift. I don't know if things will change again. There's been so much change in college football, as far as, where the power lies and what the playoff, the NIL, and all this kind of stuff. I'm interested to see how things continue, but I know that this is a year that's different from anything I've ever seen.
It is different. Let's start with the semifinals. So our 4 teams left. I saw a screenshot, and we didn't do it either. So I'm throwing us in here too. You get 12 teams to pick for your playoff. The ESPN staff, none of them got any of the final 4 teams in their 12. You and I, did you have Miami in? I did not.
I did not. The only one I got right was Oregon, because I even had Indiana losing to Alabama. So I got 1 out of 4.
I'm saying preseason.
I think I had Oregon in the Final Four.
Or even the playoff. Let's see here. I'm looking while I'm going to pull this up and see, because I do have my preseason one. Regardless, the fact that these are the 4 teams we have left is pretty incredible. Okay, I had Clemson over Miami. I think Oregon's the only one I had of these. I know I didn't have Indiana, and I know I didn't have Ole Miss. Okay, let's start with first game, the Fiesta Bowl, Miami and Ole Miss. Ole Miss will be the home team. Daniel, as far as uniforms go, my hope and prayer is that Ole Miss has told their teams to wear red. They said to wear powder to the Sugar Bowl. Was hoping that meant we'd get a powder blue helmet. I hate the white practice pants, but Daniel, they have an opportunity to correct their mistake. They told their teams to wear red. I think their best home uniform, or one of 2, is the red jersey, powder helmet, gray pants. Miami, just wear white or green pants, and we're rolling. This could be an incredible uniform matchup in the Fiesta Bowl. Let's hope the field holds up. This field famously has had bad footing. Don't want any injuries for either team, especially heading into the Natty for whoever wins. Daniel, Miami is a 3.5-point favorite as the 10 seed. Man, who do you have in the Fiesta Bowl to move on and play for a national championship?
I feel like I've gone back and forth on both of these games, but this one specifically, I think that obviously that defensive line, Ruben Bain and co, have just been unbelievable for Miami, and they've gotten hot here recently. Both of these teams are okay. So Miami is preseason what had expectations to do something, but I don't think that there was ever which you could say this for anybody, I guess, left except maybe Oregon. Maybe not. There was part of me that you're going to have to see it to believe it. You're not going to have a realization of where they're going to be. Ole Miss, I guess, is the same for what I said earlier about, how, nobody believed, especially after they lost to Georgia during the regular season. It was like, okay, there's a limit to this. Well, now both of these teams, I think, are in new territory where there's a new level of belief, I guess. I think the better team as a whole, defense and all that, is probably Miami. I just don't think I can pick against what I saw Trinidad Chambliss do. I think he's on a heater. After watching, you mentioned the 2019 SEC Championship, he was playing like Joe Burrow in that game where you had first-round talent after first-round talent chasing him down, and Joe Burrow was
better.
Not flustered at all. Exactly. He looked better. He just moved around. He did a couple similar moves as far as providing more time for his receivers. And if you're going to do that, it doesn't matter how good your secondary is. That defensive line that I think Miami has the advantage over anybody they play. I'm not going to say is going to be a non-factor, but I'm just saying this may be a neutralizer for it. And I just see Trinidad Chambliss continuing. I see him winning this game for Ole Miss. It's a 3-point spread, so I get 3 points. I just can't bet against them. I don't think Miami has that in them. On the offensive side, if this does get into a scoring match, I don't think that they can kind of go toe to toe with them, go tit for tat. So give me Ole Miss. I'm going to take them in the upset. I'll take 3 points. So if it's a close win for Miami, I'll take those points regardless, but give me Ole Miss.
I've gone back and forth on this one, man. It's a 3.5-point spread. It's the semifinal. So both these teams are some of the best football teams in college football this year. I'm going to lay the points, though. I'm going to go Miami. I think that To contradict your what if Miami has to get in a scoring match, what if Ole Miss has to play in a box? I think that's the what if Ole Miss has to play this game in a phone booth. I think that it is. I think it's more likely this game is played in the 20s than in the 40s. And if that's the case, give me Miami. I think that's the I think what I can trust in this game. And Daniel, I'm just showing my bias here. It is hard for me to pick a non-blue chip team to beat a blue to win multiple of these games. I didn't think Ole Miss could beat Georgia. So there's that. I was wrong there. They beat them. Both these teams are hot, so I think you're going to get their best game, which is good. Miami's ability to run the ball, especially recently, has really impressed me. Fletcher runs so hard, man. The offensive line that has now grown up, all these 5 stars they've got in the offensive line are now veterans. They're playing their butts off so far in this playoff. I mean, and they've already gone against, no offense to Ole Miss, they've already gone against 2 much better defensive lines in Texas A&M and Ohio State. So I would have said the same thing about Miami and Ohio State, saying, again, it's what's the button Ohio State could press that it doesn't matter what you do if they start pressing that button, and it's their air raid attack, it's their passing attack. Miami was able to shut that down. I think they can do that against Ole Miss, so long as Chambliss doesn't hit Burrow mode. If he does, I think you're probably right. and Ole Miss just he says I'm him, and Ole Miss wins. But I'll lay the points here. I do think this is like a 24-20 kind of game, and Miami's defense wins them another game in the playoff, and that they play the national championship game in their home field in Miami here in a couple weeks. So give me the Hurricanes, lay the points. We'll be different on that one. We go to the Peach Bowl. We've got Indiana, Oregon. We've seen this game once in Eugene. Indiana, your 27-20 winners. They are, what did I say, a 4-point favorite in this one over Oregon. They've been the best team in the country all year. Dan Lanning's Ducks got some folks back from injury the last 2 weeks. They're very hot. They blow out Texas Tech. This should be just an incredible matchup. Daniel, who do you have in the Peach Bowl?
Yeah, this one's. Oh, Indiana does not want me to pick them. I'll say that. I've been picking against them since before it was cool too. And they love that I pick against them because they win. They've won every game. I keep doubting them and doubting them and doubting them. Oregon lost to them the first time, and that was kind of that first peak, oh, hey, this Indiana team is legit. They went to Eugene, they beat Oregon, and they dominated them. It wasn't a particular close game. Like towards the end, Indiana kind of poured on a little bit. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, man. I'm picking Oregon. I'm taking the 4 points. I really truthfully believe in Oregon's defense. I think that this game gets played in a box similar to the Big Ten championship. And so because of that, I think even if Oregon loses, it's going to be close by like a 3-point margin. But I think Oregon wins. For the record, the Ducks are going to fly together, dude. This is Dan Lanning's time to shine. Did you see the metric, or not the metric, but the meme? It was a picture of all 4 head coaches that are left in their Alabama attire. They're all Saban disciples technically. Isn't that crazy?
Technically.
Like they're all, some of them were, 1 year or whatever.
Like Lanning was a 1-year GA, and they're like Saban tree, which I guess technically, because I'm like, what kind of, it seems like a Kirby
was
tree
a
to me.
quarterback coach, and then he left and did his thing, and he went down. Pete Golding was unceremoniously fired, but really just told, hey, you can go take the Ole Miss job, or you can be jobless. And then he took the Ole Miss job.
It won't be here.
Yeah. So
I think you're a great defensive coordinator, just not here, Pete. So wherever you want to be a great defensive coordinator, other than Alabama, you just let me know. I'll help you find it.
Gosh, and then Mario Cristobal, of course, is offensive line coach. So that's just it's funny to look at it like that. That technically it all comes back to Saban, but of all of that to not be, I know we're joking mostly about that, but Lanning is the only one of these coaches that does it Saban's way, because he got that from Kirby, doing Kirby's way. So if you're going off of a philosophical thing, this is kind of that one like grasp at normalcy I could look at as a college football fan looking for it to be still normal. is if Oregon goes through and wins, then it's like, oh, you know what? He came up through the ranks of those guys that dominated for the past 2 decades.
You know, I've gone back and forth in this game too. I woke up saying I'm going to pick Indiana. I'm picking Oregon. I'm going to take the points. I'm picking Oregon.
Yes.
This is a great tweet from Chris Felica, the Bear. He said, biggest reason Indiana wins is they don't do dumb stuff. Bad losses more than bad loses more than good wins. As in, like, playing bad loses you more games than playing good wins you games.
Right.
Indiana just doesn't do bad things. They're the second fewest penalty yards per game in the country. They lead the country in turnover margin. They've only had 8 turnovers all season. Their third down defense is they hold opponents to 28% third down conversion percentage, and they lead the country in third down conversions at 56% third down conversion rate. They just don't beat themselves, Daniel. I think they play that level in this game. And again, it's just I'm with you on that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Oregon and Miami are the 2 teams left that I think have a roster capable of winning a national championship. I know that's like, how can you say that? Because Ole Miss and Indiana only have to win 2 games. I know. I'm going to have to see it to believe it. Oregon has the best roster for my money left in college football. I think at this point in the season, that matters a lot. I think coaching matters a lot. I think Indiana probably has better coaching in this game, to be honest with you. Cignetti's you could argue he's done the best job of all time as far as where the program was compared to what he's done in Indiana. It's been incredible. Give me the Ducks. They are healthier than they were when they faced Indiana the first time. They're not beating themselves like they were. Their defense has grown. Daniel, this is the second and third best defense in the country, according to SP Plus. Excuse me, first and third. Indiana 1, Oregon 3. Ohio State was 1. They traded with Indiana after that, after the quarterfinals in FC Plus. So I think this will be a very low-scoring game. Indiana kind of blew it up in late last time, 30-20. I had to correct myself there in the first round. I think this is like a 24-20 game for Oregon. So I think both semifinals are played in the 20s. This should be a very, very good. This is probably going to be a better game. I think it will be a better game. I think this are 2 better teams in Indiana, than Ole Miss and Miami. I think this will be the better semifinal game. Just high-level football, man. Good coaching, high-level players playing at the highest level. Great quarterback matchup. Should be a good uniform matchup as long as Oregon doesn't wear black and gray when their opponent's primary color is black. I don't know what that was about. But, I mean, look, they had a good black uniform this season on the road against Penn State with black pants and a black helmet when it was the Penn State whiteout. See, that was cool looking. When your opponent's primary color is black, dude, wear green and yellow. What are we doing anyway? Beside the point. Should be a good uniform matchup in this one if they wear green and yellow. But really excited for this one. Give me the Ducks, and I'm with you on the Indiana. Just prove me wrong again. Honestly, Daniel, I'm rooting for Indiana because I said pre-show they've been the best team all year, and I think college football is a sport where most of the time prior to the 12-team era, the team that was the best team in the regular season has won the national championship a lot in the sport, more than any other U.S. sport. A few exceptions, honestly, last year was an exception. You can't tell me that a team that lost twice was one of the best. It was the best team through 12 games. They weren't. Ohio State was the best team at the end of the season last year. Absolutely. Indiana's been the best team all season. And honestly, I'm rooting for them. Give me the Ducks. I'll take the points in case they lose close. We get 4. That's a good number because they can lose by 3. So, yeah, give me the Ducks, man.
That's great, man. This is going to be a fun one. I'm excited to see both of these matchups.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think for so long we were looking and saying when Georgia and Ohio State play in the Fiesta Bowl, that's going to be the national championship.
The game.
And now you basically have had to flip it because the 2 lower seeds won the other one, and these are the 2 high seeds. This is, the 1 versus 5 instead of the, 6 versus 10 for the other one. So it's kind of a flip of kind of the psychology of it all, man. Last week really threw us all off, man.
Yeah, it's a different era of football. I'm having to get used to it. So go Hoosiers, rooting for them. We'll be back next week to recap our semifinals, talk about the national championship, make picks in that game. We're not going anywhere. So be sure to stay tuned right here at The Extra Point on YouTube and Instagram. You can follow Daniel on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Karnes with a K. That will do it for this edition of The Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob. See ya.